If you skim the list of candidates who filed to run in 2026 here in Southern Nevada, there aren't a lot of legacy names. You know, like the old political dynasties whose names are on buildings and schools. Is something changing in Vegas politics? So today we're bringing back a conversation that Sarah Lohman and Dayvid Figler had with UNLV professor Michael Green about the who's who in Vegas politics and if an old family name carries as much weight as it used to. It's Monday, January 26th. I'm Sonia Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about.
Dayvid and Michael, how valuable is it for a candidate for office in Las Vegas to have one of those family names? You know the ones, the Goodmans, the Reids. We'll get into it. Is there a lot of value there, Michael?
I think there's some value. I'm not convinced it's overly valuable, mainly because of the growth, how many people have moved here recently, where if you said to them Harry Reid, they'd say, "Oh, wasn't he the guy who was in office and
isn't that the airport?"
Yeah, his name's on the airport.
Well, yeah,
who knows?
there's that.
Yeah,
who knows? But other than that, no. But I do think it can help you in a smaller race. Maybe you're in a city or a particular district or something like that, and then I think it can be more helpful. But also, money's the mother's milk of politics, and if you have those family connections, that can help you.
That's what I was going to ask. So is it a big help with fundraising?
Oh, yeah, it's huge help with fundraising. But I'd also add to the astute history professor's list of benefits is that you get some really good jobs that place you in a good position to then advance through a political career.
I see.
So, if you go into law and your dad was this person or your mom was this person with this name, in Vegas, juice is everything. And you kind of get into these better positions that maybe others don't have the same opportunities. And then you capitalize and continue to, as we say in Vegas, parlay it into these bigger spots. So, yeah. But fundraising is a huge one. I mean, just a recent example, our district attorney is named Steve Wolfson. He has a daughter who went to law school. She got a job at the Las Vegas City Attorney's Office, having a very normal and, undistinguished career as far as, anything really big. They only deal with misdemeanors over there, no real super high-profile cases or accomplishments to that end, just being a good lawyer. And she raised more money than anyone has in the history of the race for Las Vegas municipal court judge. She outraised her opponents, many of whom had far more experience than her and had done a lot more in their careers by I think 10 or 20 to 1. And she won it handedly in the primary.
So does having this name recognition ever backfire? Is it ever a bad thing?
Oh, I think it can be. I think one of the best examples of this, back in 2010, Harry Reid's running for a 5th term in the Senate, and Rory Reid, a 2-term county commissioner, his oldest son, is running for governor. And in fact, there was talk that Harry Reid felt it would be unwise to have Rory on the slate for his own reelection. But I think it hurt Rory Reid to be on the ticket with Harry at the same time.
That maybe they were trying a little too hard to dominate politics,
Maybe just a little.
Yeah.
So let's name check some of the biggest ones. We already mentioned the Reids. Anything to add to the Harry Reid and Reid family sagas?
Well, let's not forget that Harry Reid, from his very modest and humble beginnings outside of Searchlight, Nevada, where his mom did laundry for the brothels, rose to prominence to be the most powerful Nevadan in history with regard to position in government. I mean, he was the Senate Majority Leader. You got to kind of be the president or vice president to be a little bit more impactful than that.
And a lot of people never noticed his daughter-in-law, Cindy, was on the Board of Education, which isn't the biggest, most important board in a lot of people's minds, although as an educator, I tend to think it's important.
But she used the Reid name in her surname, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What about the Neals? I've been prompted to ask you, Mike, to tell any story about Joe Neal.
Well, Joe Neal was the first black state senator. He was elected in
Cool.
72, and he served 32 years, which isn't going to happen again because of term limits. And he got a nickname when there were 20 state senators. His nickname was Old 19-1. He was usually the great dissenter. But Joe Neal worked for RICO. He was involved with the test site. Interestingly, one of the few Nevada politicians to say good things about the potential for a nuclear waste repository, which hurt him more, I think, than even his liberalism when he sought higher office. But something worth noting about him that we forget. We associate him with civil rights, getting Martin Luther King Day passed, and so on, and representing West Las Vegas. But he was basically the state senator behind the fire codes after the MGM and Hilton fires in 80 and 81. The casino operators were fighting the tough new fire codes after the MGM tragedy, and then the Hilton had a fire. And that did it. And Neal was really the guy who shepherded this through. And we tend to forget that he was also a very effective legislator when he had the chance.
He also, and I just want to add on, famously was the dissent voice trying to raise the gaming tax, thinking that our gaming tax was so low that, certainly they're not paying their fair share given what they take out of our community. And he was often pilloried for that. And now his daughter, Dina Neal, is kind of in his spot, and she often will take on these very unpopular causes as well, sort of in the tradition of her father. And I think sometimes when she gets a little cornered, she sort of recalls the spirit of her father in, fighting for the little guy.
She's
Very
a
much
state
so.
senator, correct?
She is, and her efficacy is also, a lot of people try to marginalize her impact. They find her to be quite feisty.
Well, we just did a little reporting on her because she has been the driving force behind getting people out of the Windsor Park neighborhood and into suitable housing that isn't sinking, which does seem like some basic human rights. So good on the Neals. All right, let's get into the big names. I mean, this one is going to sound familiar to a lot of people. What about the Goodmans?
Where do we start there, Michael?
And I don't think we'll ever finish. Here's what people forget. Oscar talked about running for mayor before he actually ran. He talked about it in 95. And the reaction then, I remember this, and the reaction in 99 was, first of all, oh my God, mob lawyer, we're going backward. Isn't it terrible? But the other response was, Carolyn was instrumental in founding the Meadows School and involved in a bunch of community activities. She's the one who should run for mayor. And then Oscar wins his 3 terms. And he said she didn't seek his opinion. She was going to do what she wanted to do. And when she ran for mayor, what did people say? Oh, she's just capitalizing on Oscar's name.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Almost
and then, of
sounds
course,
like has something to do with her being a woman. Go on, David.
Yes.
Well, and once Oscar Goodman was elected, he was reelected, termed out. And then the very next mayor was his wife, Carolyn, who also did the same thing. So there were 25 years. So people call it definitely a dynasty. A quarter century in a city as young as Las Vegas is nothing to sneeze at.
It's a lot of influence.
And then when that term was up, there are 4 Goodman children out there, each of them accomplished in their own way. 2 of them are lawyers. One of the 2 is a judge. One's a doctor, and the other one is involved in psychology. And, the thing is that none of them decided to pick up the mantle, and none of them, to my knowledge, have ever run for political office, nor is there really a desire.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Question, and please excuse my naivete as a relative newbie to Las Vegas, but what was Oscar Goodman doing before he was mayor? I only know him as mayor and then post-mayor.
As Michael said, he was the lawyer for the mob, famously.
Wow. So no political appointments or elections before?
Nope.
Well, he was the president of his synagogue, and as we know from our Senator Jackie Rosen, that can be a stepping stone in Las Vegas. She went from that to Congress to Senate.
Not to mention it's harder than being a senator or a mayor. But David and I grew up watching Oscar walk to and from the courthouse with a variety of characters.
I mean, I have so many Oscar Goodman stories, including when he and I went out to lunch and we had to leave the room because he wasn't allowed to be in there with certain people. It was a whole thing.
Wow.
I will say that he did appoint me to be the municipal court judge. That was his doing. So hats off always to my good friend, Oscar Goodman, who is celebrating, I think, his 50th birthday.
Why?
Yes.
Why?
He's getting up there.
He had to leave the room because they were clients or people he was suing?
There was two of his different clients that are in there that if the federal government saw him and these two clients who were there separately in the same room, we would all be arrested for RICO. That's what he said.
There you have it.
But I believe him.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go to maybe cooler territories. What about the Cortez family? I assume this is a Catherine Cortez Masto relation?
Our Senator Catherine Cortez Masto grew up here in Las Vegas, probably a very proud Clark High School graduate, and she was involved in a lot of different stuff. And her dad was an attorney, the longtime head of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. He was a member of the Clark County Commission. I will say that, people used to say, well, being on the Clark County Commission was the most powerful position in all of Nevada. But I would say that being the head of the LVCVA is a arguably much more powerful position, certainly as it has evolved. And Manny Cortez, her dad, was certainly very, very high profile. Mr. Cortez has a school named after him, I think him and his wife. And so, she became a lawyer around the same time that I did. And then she worked as a civil attorney for a little bit. And then Catherine Cortez Masto ran for attorney general. She won that race. And now she is our senator, our two-term senator. She's the senior senator from Nevada.
All right, Michael, how about the Foleys?
Well, the first of the Foleys to come to Nevada came to Goldfield at the height of the boom there in 1906.
I've been up there.
Yep. And old Thomas's son, Roger T., came down here. He was a Muni judge, district attorney. He was eventually the district court judge. And at that time, we had one judge for both Clark County and Lincoln County. This is the late 30s. And
the circuit judges, they called them, they would ride on their horses or, cars at that point.
Yeah, by then he was riding his, maybe he had a Mustang, I don't know. And then he became a federal judge in 45. Well, he had 5 sons, and let's give Mrs. Foley credit for that. But his oldest son, Roger D., became a district attorney here. And then he was state attorney general, and he was appointed to the federal bench. And his father had taken senior status. He served with his father as a federal judge. Then there were 4 brothers to Roger: Tom, who became a district court judge; Joe, who became a regent; George, who was district attorney; and John, who was a state senator who ran for both lieutenant governor and governor, didn't get there. But at one point, between Roger D's DA and AG years, the 5 brothers were a law firm. Eventually, Joe's daughter, Helen, goes to the legislature and is a major lobbyist now. And several of the other kids have been very active in the community. And the Foley Federal Building downtown is a testament to their importance. It's kind of funny because Roger D. is on a tape that was made of a few people discussing mob connections here when he was district attorney, and it wasn't that he was mob connected. They said he's a bit of a moral reformer. Well, Lily St. Cyr was performing at the El Rancho Vegas, and he had the show stopped because she was stripping. And so for years, he got ridden about that one in Las Vegas, for heaven's sake.
Of all places. All right, Dayvid, we're going to come back to you. What about the Goins family?
The Goins family,
the Goins.
North Las Vegas royalty. So way back when, the patriarch, I guess, of the Goins family, Theron Goins, was the...
Theron Goins. Now, there's
great
a name.
Yeah. And he was one of the first, if not the first, Black man to serve on the city council of North Las Vegas. And at one point, the mayor of North Las Vegas was out of commission for a moment. And so he became the first Black mayor, if only for a moment, during a proceeding. His daughter, Pamela Goins Brown, is now the actual mayor of North Las Vegas, and she served terms as a city councilwoman prior to that. His son, Byron Goins, was a longtime Las Vegas planning commissioner and had an unsuccessful run for city council. But the Goins, I mean, talk about, there's parks and schools and all the other stuff. And so, if there is a Goins on a ballot, certainly that person is at some degree of an advantage, especially in that community, having been there for so very, very long.
Okay, Michael, bring us home with the Laxalt family. I do remember an Adam Laxalt. I think I've gotten some political flyers.
Oh, yes, you have. Well, you see, Adam is the grandson of Paul, and there are some cynics who would say that his entire platform was being Paul's grandson.
And who was Paul, Michael?
Who was Paul? Good. I'm glad you asked me that. Paul Laxalt was a Basque, grew up in a Basque boarding house hotel in Carson City with his brothers and sisters and his mother. His father was a sheep herder. And if you want to read a beautiful book, his brother Robert, who stayed out of political office, wrote Sweet Promised Land about their father and going back to the Pyrenees. And Paul married into a prominent family, the Ross family, which was a Reno legal family. And Paul went on to be DA in Ormsby County, which has since merged with Carson City. Then he was elected lieutenant governor. During his term as lieutenant governor, he ran for the Senate, and in one of the closest elections in Nevada history, he lost to the one-term incumbent, Howard Cannon, by 48 votes.
Wow.
Demanded
Get
a
out
recount.
And vote, everyone.
Yep, demanded a recount and lost by 84.
Oh.
And then 2 years
That'll
later...
show him.
That'll teach him a lesson. So 2 years later, he ran for governor against Grant Sawyer, who was running for a third term. And he was running for a third term in Nevada at the same time his friend Pat Brown was running for a third term as governor of California. Laxalt won in Nevada, and California's elected some old actor named Ronald Reagan. And Reagan and Laxalt became close pals working together on the border. And Laxalt did a term as governor, got out, and then there was a vacancy for the U.S. Senate, and Laxalt was elected, served 2 terms. And when he was reelected, Ronald Reagan became president as that term began, and he was really the most powerful senator at the time because he represented Reagan. And eventually his grandson, Adam, who in the interest of dynasties is actually the son of a senator from New Mexico named Pete Domenici, who had had an affair with Paul's daughter. And Adam came back here, if he'd been here much in the first place. He ran for attorney general and was elected, beating, by the way, Ross Miller, whose daddy Bob was governor, and Ross later was elected to the county commission. Adam served his term as attorney general, then ran for governor and lost, ran for U.S. Senate and lost, and I guess he has nowhere to go but down now.
Do you have something to add, David? You look delighted.
Oh, no. I mean, it was very funny
delighted.
that a lot of people at the time were like, here's the battle. This was the fight between Laxalt and Miller, and I don't want to. We've gotten this far without using the term nepo babies, but and I know Ross very well. He also served as the Secretary of State for Nevada, but he was handed his patootie by a guy who, by most accounts, didn't really live here, didn't have a lot of connections here, other than that name.
David, if only you or I had kids so that someone could inherit this beautiful podcast we've laid out in Las Vegas.
Well, I've got my dad's good looks and his charm from being a casino card dealer.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, there are a handful of family names about town, the Tibertes, the Mulaski family, founding families, let's call them. But some of these families end up going into politics and some of them avoid it. So why do you think that is? Why do some families head first into the politics of our city, county, and state, and some do not?
There's an old story about Mo Sedway, who came out of the mob. He'd driven liquor trucks in Prohibition for Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky. And he made noises about running for the city council then the city commission in Las Vegas. And supposedly Siegel took him aside and said, look, we don't run for office, we control them.
Oh.
And this is not to say that if you're a Tiberti or a Mulaski, to name two very prominent names who have been very important to our history, that they're sitting there saying, well, why should we run when we control it? But there's also the tendency to want to be behind the scenes or not to want to go through the public meat grinder when you have been involved in business. And heaven knows there are strange business dealings out there.
I would add to that, these family names are often seen in the contributors lists for those politicians to, maybe that same end is that they have more weight to support who they like, or that they have a pipeline that's maybe a little bit more direct than the average citizen because of the prominence of the family and their importance to the community. But, I think that there's plenty of people who have decided to devote their lives to philanthropy with the family money or with, business endeavors, et cetera, and that politics to many is kind of a distraction maybe for others. Perhaps, but they always have their say. I mean, there's certainly no doubt that those with power and influence don't readily get rid of it as much as that they, maybe avoid the public spotlight.
So, Mike, you alluded to this a little at the beginning. Does a transient or quickly growing population of newcomers really care about legacy? I mean,
ooh, what a good question.
I will have been here 4 years as of August, and honestly, other than the name of the airport and the Catherine Cortez Masto, a lot of these names I had not heard of.
Nope.
So, should I care about their legacy?
Well, of course you should care about it since we should care about our history. But is legacy enough reason to elect someone? And I don't think it is. You should be able to show what you can do. And you can find a lot of professions where people have benefited from a name, but then in the end, they still have to prove themselves. And in politics, I think this is true. There are people running around today who, if somebody ran whose dad or granddad had been a U.S. senator 50 years ago, they're going to say, so? And are they that important now? But I can remember there were some Nevada politicians, I think Reid was one of them, Harry Reid, who said essentially every 6 years I have to reintroduce myself because so many people are new and don't know me.
That sounds like an issue definitely for our contemporary politicians as well. What do you think, Dayvid?
100% agree with Dr. Green. We have the fastest growing population in all our little areas. And again, it does give you an ability to raise a little bit more money, have more support from people, get endorsements from people, that sort of thing. But at the end, you would like to think that people who come here who aren't recognizing the name will do their best to figure out and vet. But, I guess sometimes it becomes a war of how many signs are out there versus who's going to be the best person for the interests of the community.
Well, Dr. Green, Judge Figler, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
That was fun, Sarah.
Thank you.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed this show, send it to a friend. You can rate this show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.